Okay, and if I did it right, all that leaves me with are the trafficking cases 20 CF 1218, A through double A. We'll start at the top and go through them one by one, because there's a couple differences as I noticed I was going through, and we'll go through them. So first up, Lorenzo Brown, 20 CF 1218A, Mr. Gurgoza.
Good morning, Judge. I have several motions that are set for a hearing in May. I think it's May 5th or May 10th.
Appears to be May 10th. So Ms. Rumley, where do you want me to put this?
The next complex case management date is what I would be requesting.
Okay.
I do know that we're hopeful to start setting depositions in the next couple weeks. We're waiting on one final defendant to get representation that we can also address later this morning. But I do want to keep us, on some sort of a status check schedule.
Okay, so you want to go with the May cycle or the June cycle?
Judge, I would prefer the May cycle so we can make sure that the cases are all.
Okay, Mr. Gurgoza.
I'm sorry if I may
That's okay,
interrupt.
Mr. Berry, what do you need?
It's what I have, obviously, one of the defendants. I don't think we're going to have much done between now and the May 13th, 14th case management. I think we should set this in June. Hopefully then we'll have depositions set and so forth. In May, we're just going to be talking about the same thing we're doing today, and that clogs up your docket with this many defendants.
Judge, I don't necessarily have an objection to that. The one thing I would request, though, is that Mr. Walters, who is the unrepresented defendant today, be put on the May cycle. He's really the one I'm concerned with. He's the one now who we're just waiting for to start the deposition process.
And that's what I was going to suggest, Ms. Brumley, based on what you said, that we'll go. So how about, so why don't we'll set these for June 18th at 9 o'clock. And again, I'm going to run through each one. But for Mr. Brown, June 18th at 9 o'clock. And when we get to the one pro se, we can talk about a way to make sure that we're making progress on that one. And then obviously, Mr. Gurgoza, I'll hear your motions in May and we'll see where we are. So June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Brown. Next up, Juan Roll, 20 CF 1218C, Mr. Villacava.
Good morning, Your Honor. Angela Gaston on behalf of Mr. Roll. We would request that June 18th CMC date at 9 a.m.
Okay, and just so you know, I am working on the response to the motion to reduce bond that I heard this week. I actually started working on it yesterday. So I'll get you guys an answer here shortly.
Thank
Ms.
you, Your
Rumley?
Honor. May I be?
Ms. Rumley, you go with June 18th?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. How about for these cases, unless you tell me otherwise, I'll assume you are. All right. Thanks, Ms. Augustin. Juanita Harris, 20 CF 1218D, Mr. Oosterbond.
Good morning, Your Honor. Asking for the June 18th.
Okay. June 18th, 9 o'clock for Ms. Harris. Levi Dennis, 20 CF 1218E. Ms. Human.
Morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Asking for the same date, please.
Okay. I know there's a couple that have another wrinkle. Well, at least I think they do. Anyway, June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Dennis. Rashad Hampton, 20 CF 1218F. Ms. Mead.
Your Honor, I'm in agreement with that date.
Okay. June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Hampton. Next up, Alonzo Thomas, 20 CF 1218G.
Good morning,
Upson.
Landon Miller standing in for Ms. Upson. We would ask for the June 18th date.
Okay. June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir.
Next up, Dantes Clark, 20 CF 1218H. Mr. Zonas.
Yes, Your Honor, June 18th, please, with a waiver.
Okay, June 18th at 9 o'clock for Mr. Clark. Mr. Riley, 20 CF 1218I. Mr.
Good
Mummert.
morning again. Yes, Michael Mummert on behalf of Eric Riley. Your Honor, we are asking for the June 18th with a waiver. Additionally, we will be joining Mr. Gurgoza in his motion to sever on May 10th.
Okay, perfect. All right. June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Riley. Next up, Curtis Williams, 20 CF 1218J. Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge. I would ask for that June 18th date.
Okay, June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Next up, Arthur Coleman, 20 CF 1218K. Mr. Rios or Mr. Hyder?
Matthew Hyder for Mr. Coleman, Your Honor. June 18th will be just fine.
Okay, thank you.
To my
June
fellow
18th.
counsel that's still left on the line, I'm actually in the process of converting all the discovery to searchable text documents in PDF form. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to share once I finish that process.
Great.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Hyder. June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Coleman. Next up, Jesus Blanco, 20 CF 1218L. Mr. Fayette.
Judge would take that June date, waive speedy trial.
Okay, June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Blanco. Next up, Brian Williams, 20 CF 1218M. Mr. Day.
Good morning again, Your Honor. That June date is fine. We are in the process of still waiting for that last co-defendant to get counsel, and then we will coordinate setting the key depositions, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Williams. Kevin Perry, 20 CF 1218N. Who's covering for Ms. Hurst? Is that you, Mr. White?
Judge, I can. Christian White for the record on behalf of Kevin Perry. And I'll just ask to have him set where everybody else is going. I think the June complex case
18th.
management.
Yep, okay. June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Perry. Next up, Roberto Martinez, 20 CF 1218O. Mr. Alvarez.
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. David Alvarez on his behalf. He is present here in my office. We would request the same June date with a waiver.
Okay, great, thank you. June
Thank you.
18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Martinez. Next up, Alicia Scott, 20 CF 1218Q. Mr. Brown.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. Ms. Scott's case, we did provide a specialized device to the Sheriff's Department to provide us with all of the phone calls from this case so she could review them and I could review them. I need to pick that up from the CCSO. I do anticipate a plea in this case, but I'm going to request continuance for the waiver to whatever date the court has been setting these other cases for. It's fine.
June 18th at 9 o'clock for Ms. Scott. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Verderamo, Kevin Rolls, 20 CF 1218R.
Good morning, Judge. June 18th with a waiver, please.
June 18th, 9 o'clock. Thank you. I got to call them individually. Sorry. Next up, Marvin Hamlin, 20 CF 1218T. Mr. Casassa.
I'm good with June 18th, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Casassa. June 18th, 9 o'clock. Next up, Mark Phillips, 20 CF 1218U. Mr. Brown.
Broken record, I guess, at this point, but June 18th sounds nice, Judge. For Ms. Rumley's sake, I'll mention that this still appears to be a plea. I just want to keep my cases together.
That's fine. Mr. Phillips, June 18th, 9 o'clock. Next up, David James, 20 CF 1218W. Mr. DeCovo. Do I have Mr. DeCovo?
Judge, I know in the chat, there was a message that Mr. DeCovo was in another hearing and would join as soon as that one was done. It looks like he's here, but I'm not sure if he's in two places, maybe.
Oh, I see him. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is his assistant currently, just holding his place, trying to let him know that he can join. I'm just messaging him to see if he's available to join now.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, ma'am. I'm going to move on. We'll come back to Mr. James. Eugene Pla, 20 CF 1218X. Mr. Tyndall. Mr. Tyndall, you're on mute. I saw your lips moving, and I'm assuming you're saying June 18th at 9 o'clock.
Sorry about that, Judge. Yes, June 18th, 9 o'clock is fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, George Broughton, 20 CF 1218Y. Mr. Barry, you always get the guys at the end of the alphabet. Why is that?
This one's in the beginning of the alphabet, but he happens to be he has a case in the same situation in Fort Myers, and he's number 1 in Fort Myers and last in Collier County. I can't figure that out. But, I guess it would be rude for me to have started the June 18th and then object to it at this point, but
you certainly can, Mr. Barry. Everybody else is left now. You could change it or mix it up.
we're fine with June 18th.
Only the people who remained who could follow along.
And
June 8th.
Unfortunately, some of the people that have left, I wanted to remind them to, if they do file a motion, they need to be copying co-counsel of those motions. So.
Yep. Okay, June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Broughton. Idris Walters, 20 CF 1218. Mr. Walters, are you on the phone? If you are, I need you to unmute. Mr. White, how do we unmute again? You told us yesterday.
There he is.
*6.
Mr. Walters, if it's you, 066. Mr. Walters, you with me?
Yes, sir. I'm unmuted.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Walters, I see you're not represented yet by counsel. You have a right to an attorney, sir. If you can't afford one, one can be appointed for you by the court. If you would like some additional time to talk to a lawyer before we talk about your case, I'm happy to give you that time. Would you like some additional time to talk to a lawyer, Mr. Walters, before we talk about your case?
Yes, sir. I'm in the process of getting one. I was incarcerated in Fort Myers with a similar case, and he told me to let you guys know this is actually my first arraignment because I was incarcerated.
Correct. This is your first case management, and we also need to arraign you. And since we know that you're here now, did you have counsel for the Lee County case that you're going to bring into this case, or are you going to hire a different counsel?
I'm gonna get the same counsel.
Okay. Ms. Rumley, would you like to do Mr. Walters' arraignment?
Yes, Judge. We need to arraign Mr. Walters on the amended information. If I could just have one moment.
Sure.
So Mr. Walters is charged here in Collier County with trafficking cocaine 400 grams or more. It's a first-degree felony punishable by a maximum of 30 years Florida State Prison with the minimum mandatory of 15 years. Mr. Walters, we're going to enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf if that's what you'd like us to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, Mr. Walters, what I'm going to do, I'm sorry, Mr. Rumley, I interrupted you.
That's all right. Judge, my request is that we do set this for the May complex case management date. In the meantime, I can represent to the court that I've spoken with defense in Lee County. The charges are related, so defense counsel up there has a lot of the discovery for this case already. And I did notify him that we need to begin setting depositions for the rest of the Collier County cases. And I think how he put it is, well, when they get set, if I'm on the case, I guess I'll have to accept the dates if they're already set for depots. So I'm going to advise Mr. Day's office, who's kind of taking the lead on setting those initial key depots, to start the process of setting the depositions. And then if Mr. Walters does retain an attorney, either his Lee County counsel or somebody else, we'll let them know about the deposition dates and ask that they accept those dates and not force us to all reschedule them.
Okay. So Mr. Walters, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to set you on the May 14th at 9 o'clock case management docket. I'm going to ask that you get counsel in place so that they can start participating, and then I can just touch base and make sure they're on board with and understand what's going on. Okay.
Okay, yeah, because I had started counsel in this case, then I got arrested with a similar case in Fort Myers, so I've been incarcerated. But yeah,
understood. So if you can just get them in place for the May date, so we can touch base, that would be great, and then we'll get you lined up with everybody else. All right.
All right, that's May 14th at 9 o'clock, correct, Judge?
Yep, May 14th at 9 o'clock.
Okay, I'll tell them.
Thank you, Mr. Walters.
Thank you.
Okay, going on, Keenan Frederick, 20 CF 1218 AA, Miss Mead.
Your Honor, I'm fine with that, June 18th date, and there's been a previous waiver.
Okay. June 18th, 9 o'clock for Mr. Frederick, and LeVar, Maycock, Beckles, 20 CF 1218 double B. Looks like you're on that one as well, Ms. Mead.
That's correct, Your Honor. Same with Mr. Beckel.
Okay, June 18th, 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Mr. DeCovo, I saw you were back. David James, 20 CF 1218 W.
Yes.
Okay,
morning.
sir, what we've been doing for everybody else is setting everybody out 2 months to June 18th at 9 o'clock. They're going to work on setting depositions. We needed, Mr. Walters was the only unrepresented, and he was just here and said he's hiring counsel. So we should be in a good spot for you guys to start scheduling that stuff.
Well, okay. And also, Judge, the case is, well, I'm all ears for discussing the case with the government. I haven't had a chance to talk to Ms. Rumley yet, so call me anytime. Cases, I don't know how much the depositions are going to forward our knowledge of the case. It's pretty well on tape.
I would agree.
I mean, I don't know.
Mr. DeCovo, you and Ms. Rumley can.
You guys, Ms. Rumley, give me a call. I think I have a honest proposal. How's that? For paraphrasing.
Okay.
Sure thing. I'll reach out to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we'll leave you June 18th, 9 o'clock. If you guys reach some sort of resolution, you let me know. But I think that does it for the trafficking cases.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Roca, anything you need?
No, I'm good, Judge. Thank you.
All right. So it's 9:38. You guys are going to be live and in person in courtroom 2A at 10 o'clock.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll see you guys then. Nice job this morning.